movies from various genres and decades. Stay tuned for this episode. All right, we're back with episode 11. This time we've got 5 favorite cult movies.
Campy movies, right?
And campy movies, just all, just kind of across the board,
I went with campy because I thought that was what we were doing.
And honestly, I couldn't find 2 of campy movies that were enough. I mean, and the 2 of them were actually sequels. So, all right. Well, let's let Bill go first.
Okay.
I'll go first. Okay, I just wanted to make the statement that I am dedicating mine to the passing of my favorite director, Roger Corman. Got the T-shirt on from a drive-in where I saw some of his movies a few years ago. Never got to meet the man, unfortunately, but he's one of my 2 all-time favorite directors. He did not direct all of the movies I will cover today. Some of them he only tenuously was associated with them in some way. But the first one he was pretty directly associated. The first one I like is A Bucket of Blood. Despite its title, it is campy in that it's somewhat comedy, right? I like to define campy. I don't know if everybody went with the same definition of campy. We didn't discuss this, but campy to me is intentionally over the top, whereas where it's unintentional, it's kitsch. It's a failed attempt at pop culture. So I went with ones that are intentionally over the top. Bucket of Blood definitely fits that moniker. It has much of the same cast as Corman's Little Shop of Horrors, the original. Mr. Mushnick actually plays a beatnik, and the plot is basically they're a bunch of beatniks. They're all about art and sculpting and painting and music and things like that. And the main character is really bad at all of that stuff. But an accident happens, and one of his subjects gets covered in his medium in a clay of some sort and dies. And everybody raves about what a great sculpture it turned out to be. So in order to keep this going, he has to keep burying people in plaster in order to say that he sculpted it and made these great artworks. So it's comedy. It's a little bit of horror. I love the title. I don't know if the title really has a lot to do with the plot, but that's kind of par for the course for Corman anyway, exploitation guy. So that was it actually is one of my favorite Cormans as well. Really set the stage. Came out in '59, so it was just a year before Little Shop. I'm sure it inspired it at least to some degree. Still fairly early in Corman's career. And I just love that movie, actually. It's hilarious, in a dark comedy kind of a way. But so that's my first one, A Bucket of Blood, 1959, Roger Corman. I believe directs and produces. And he might have also written that one. I'd have to look that up. But yeah, he was a writer, producer, and director.
Okay, well then that gets to me. And I'm going to go with Little Shop of Horrors, so it's very appropriate. The original Little Shop of Horrors, not the remake. And the 3 of those movies, there were three of his sort of spoof films, which was Bucket of Blood, Little Shop of Horrors, and Creature from the Haunted Sea. And for my money, A Little Shop of Horrors is my favorite of the 3. And it's so completely absurd, but it's got the same sort of thing that yours has, in that is this guy's sort of a nobody, and he gets this plant that needs blood to survive and to grow, and he becomes a superstar because of this plant that no one's seen before, but he has to keep feeding it body parts or the whole people. And so it's a similar sort of theme in that way. And you're right, it probably inspired it. And it's just such a fun movie. It still holds up really well as just a completely goofy, over the top film.
I would agree. It probably is the best of those three as well, actually. As much as I love Bucket of Blood, Little Shop is probably at least just a hair, a little bit of a hair better. It is hilarious. I love that movie. My
Yeah.
favorite part. My favorite part is when they're doing the high school float and the high school girls. It's towards
Oh,
the end of
yeah.
the movie, and the faces of everybody that the plant has killed
Oh,
pop
yeah.
out of the pop out of the blooms. Like, this is perfect for the float. It's so over the top. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, it's a fun movie.
It really is.
Didn't that have Jack Nicholson in it?
Yes, one of Jack Nicholson's early roles. And I think he had several of his early roles were in Corman movies because he's in The Terror as well.
Yeah.
He is. He's in The Terror. He's in The Raven. He is in several. And I believe one of the reasons for that was a little bit of nepotism. I believe John Nicholson was related to him, who owned AIP, so American International Pictures, that Corman was working for at the time.
Oh, that makes sense.
But yeah, he worked with Corman a lot. And actually, Corman even produced what's that biker film? With Dennis Hopper.
Easy Rider.
Oh, Easy Rider.
Easy Rider. Yeah, I believe he's one of the producers on that as well. That
Yeah,
really was a
Nicholson's in
breakthrough for Corman. Or for a breakthrough for Jack Nicholson, rather.
Yeah.
Which actually, Little Shop of Horrors was the breakthrough. They usually point to that as the breakthrough for Corman, actually. Is what put him over the top. Like a $10,000 budget, and he wound up making hundreds of thousands, which at the time was pretty good, and actually led to him being able to finance the Poe films.
All right. My first film is The Seven Faces of Dr. Lao. This falls under so many different genres. There's fantasy, there's campy, there's a western. It's all of these together, and it's basically Dr. Lao has this traveling circus, and it's a very unique circus where all of the 7 characters in it are played by Tony Randall. And some of them you could recognize that it's him. Others you have to look really closely. But the lead character, Dr. Lao, a lot of how this movie comes across may not be made today because there's this was basically pre-civil rights from 1964, and they just have a lot of wrong stereotypes about Chinese people and Black people, but if you put that aside and you look at this was a product of its time. So, and also you look at it, it's a pure fantasy movie that you just can get into it. I mean, there's a lot of the like I said, the different characters. He has Dr. Lao, then there's Abominable Snowman, then there's Medusa, Pan, and even in Pan, Barbara Eden's in this, and Pan, for this time, I mean, he's playing his flute, and all of a sudden, Barbara Eden is getting a little, flustered, because it's affecting her, excuse me, and you really have to watch it to see the just the amazing visuals of it, and this is one of those movies that hasn't even made it to Blu-ray. It's just on DVD. I mean, pretty inexpensive when I last checked. But it's definitely, this would be one that would look fantastic on Blu-ray. But like I was telling Bill before, I said there's a lot of movies that are on Blu-ray, and all of a sudden, a few years later, they're putting it out in 4K, and it's like, they kind of need to go into these vaults and find movies that really, I mean, this one, like I said, beautiful, because the colors, even on the DVD, are fantastic. So I can only imagine how they are, you know, on Blu-ray. But this is that's a great one. I first saw that my ex was telling me about that she watched in the movie theater in the late 60s, and so when we saw it on DVD, she said, "Oh, we got to watch this. You're gonna like this." So, and I had it in my collection ever since. I think that's now about it. I've had that over 24 years. So that's my first choice.
Yeah, I have seen that. They used to play it on Turner Classic Movies fairly regularly. One thing about those early 60s is, you know, they were moving over from black and white to color movies, and that's why there's just color. You know, they really wanted the colors are so vibrant. I wish they would do that today, actually. I really like the colors of that era.
Right.
They're beautiful films. All right, so I'm up next. So my next one is another Corman movie that he produced and directed. The Raven was so, you know, Corman is probably most famous for his Poe adaptations that mostly starred Vincent Price, with one exception. They got a little tired of doing that for a while, so they decided, let's do one where we spoof ourselves, right? Where we spoof this whole Poe series that we've been doing. And they got an excellent cast on it. Jack Nicholson comes back, we mentioned a little bit ago. Boris Karloff is in there. Peter Lorre comes in. And who am I missing? Vincent Price, of course. They're having Vincent Price and Boris Karloff are both wizards, and they have this wizard battle and everything. They turn Peter Lorre into a raven early on, and Price is quoting Poe reading the Raven, and the Raven actually answers back in Peter Lorre's voice, which is just hilarious. So it was a really good film. It's got an interesting backstory in that most of those Poe films were shot in 3 weeks' time. They had a 3-week shooting schedule. Corman, of course, is most famous for his budgets. Anybody who ever worked for him, and the list is huge. That's the one thing, you loved him or you hate him, but the only thing you didn't do, he had one rule: you can do whatever you want on the set, you can do whatever you want when you direct, don't go over budget. Can't go over budget. So on The Raven, he had a 3-week shooting schedule, and I believe they finished filming in 10 days. And they wind up filming, and instead of just calling it a day and just calling it quits, they wind up filming not one, but 2 more movies with the last 5 days of shooting. They wind up shooting The Terror, or at least most of it. Then it was finished over some weekends. They filmed like a good half of it. And another movie with Boris Karloff called Targets, which became Peter Bogdanovich's first directorial debut. So, and if you look at the list of people who directed The Terror, I think there's like 7 or 8 people who directed some. I think Peter Bogdanovich directed a couple scenes. Jack Hill, Corman, of course, directs a portion of it. So, it's a great film, though. It is a lot of fun. It's a lot of these actors just poking fun at themselves, which is kind of neat to see. I don't know what the original script looked like, if they went off of that or not to do some of these gags. But
yeah, I remember hearing that Boris Karloff was not very pleased about it because Peter Lorre would not stick to the script, and he just ad-libbed everything. And Boris was very much you do it the way it's written. And he got very frustrated with Peter Lorre.
I could believe that. Peter Lorre definitely sounds like, if anyone's ad-libbing, it's probably Peter Lorre on there. He's definitely, he was at an age at that point. He's like, I'm going to do what I want. What are they going to fire me? I've already been in this business 30-something years.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. It's very goofy, but it's a lot of fun.
Exactly. It is goofy but fun. It's probably its best description. Um, I like the one scene where one of the characters, it looks like they died, and then they go down. There's a spot of blood in the rug, and they go down and they touch the rug, and they say, "Strawberry jam."
Yeah.
It's just like making fun of the whole production and everything. It's kind of like Spaceballs to Star Wars, right? You got, after you do a couple serious ones, you gotta just do a spoof and spoof everything.
Exactly.
That's my next one. The Raven, 1963 is the date for that one.
Okay, so that brings us back to me, and I'm going to jump to 1966 and a movie that is definitely camp, but is kind of an odd sort of thing. The Batman movie, which they had done a season of Batman, and then they decided to do a motion picture for the big screens. And so they had a big budget. They managed to bring in other stuff like the Bat Boat and the Bat Copter, which they had the budget for. And they had 4 villains instead of 1. You had Penguin, Joker, Riddler, and Catwoman. And they brought all the main actors for those in. And it's just, I mean, it's exactly what the TV series is, only, on a bigger budget and bigger scale. And it's just the same kind of campy fun as the TV series. You can't take it seriously, because if you do, you're going to hate it. But it's just a good time.
It is a
Yeah,
good one.
I remember that one scene where he's carrying that bomb and
You
trying to
just
find a
can't
place
get
where
rid
to
of a
dispose.
bomb these days.
You just can't get rid of a bomb. Instead of one edge and there's ducks. You couldn't.
Yeah.
I know.
The woman with the carriage and stuff, but the ducks. I also like the shark repellent.
Oh yeah. Yeah, when he's hanging there with the shark off of his leg.
This big, obviously rubber shark hanging off his leg. He pulls out of his back belt a shark repellent spray and sprays the shark. Falls back into the water. It's great stuff. I love that movie. I was a big fan of the TV show too.
Oh yeah, I watch the TV show every weekend.
Yeah, that was good. All right. My next stop, I'm going to kind of go in a little bit chronological order here. Jumping to 1974, a movie called The Island on Top of the World. This is a Disney film, an action adventure where basically the scientist finds that through his son's is missing, and finds that there's some island on the top of the world that has been there since the beginning of time. And so they go on with this huge airship. I mean, if you see this airship, this was I thought this was kind of like the Nautilus of the air. It's just such a beautiful ship. And they go, I believe they're going towards the Arctic, and they run across Vikings, and it turns out that the area that they go to is, like the one character said, it's the place where whales go to die. And it was just so, for 1974, so I was 8 years old, just to see that on a Saturday matinee, and I absolutely loved it. So when I saw that it was out on DVD years ago, 20 some odd years ago, I had to grab it, because it was just one of those, and to watch it again, it kind of takes me back to that 8-year-old kid watching that on the big screen. And it has a little bit of mythology with the action and adventure. David Hartman is in it, and it's primarily looks like it's a British production because two of the leads are British, but then David Hart obviously is not, you know. So this is great to show kids because they, you know, it's got everything you really need. It's got a great story, got great action, and pretty well done. And again, this is another one I'm surprised it's not on Blu-ray, but you know, Disney. You know, they're probably holding off on this one. Was probably not that important for them to re-release it on Blu-ray, but this would also look gorgeous on Blu-ray. So that's my second one.
I haven't had a chance to see that one. That sounds good.
It really is. I kind of falls on the line as like the ones that I just talked about previously. You know, the land, time for God, and people, the time for God. It kind of, it's in that kind of a vibe. You know, that especially, you know, the '70s action adventure movies were great. And I love those things.
Definitely. All right, so mine, okay, so the next two I have, actually, really the next three. Corman's involvement might be somewhat tenuous, but for The Private Eyes, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that one. When I was a kid and I saw this movie, I thought it was the funniest thing ever. The Private Eyes with Tim Conway and Don Knotts playing these bumbling detectives trying to solve this mystery of this old man's death. Roger Corman was the distribution producer. A little bit tenuous of his involvement, of his connection to it. You know, production's obviously already done by the time he's distributing, but he was a distributor for it, one of several. But that movie's just hilarious. I love the poems. Every time one of the characters dies, there's this poem, and the last line doesn't rhyme, and it's obvious what the last line should be to make it rhyme.
Right.
And it's just hilarious. I think Tim Conway actually wrote it or co-wrote it anyway with a few other people. I remember reading. And Tim Conway and Don Knotts, for those who don't know, they did pair up for a number of movies. Most of them don't really hold up that well, in my opinion. They're okay, but this one, in my opinion, was their best pairing. I really thought their timing and everything was pretty good in this one. And the jokes are better than most of the others. They hold up a little better. But it does have a creepy old mansion with trapdoors and hallways, creepy hallways that they're, you know, walking through with corridors everywhere. So, you know, it's kind of a throwback, kind of looks like it's in the 1930s. Movie came out actually in 1980. I believe I saw it in the theater and probably on cable about 500 times in the first couple of years that it was out. And then it kind of disappeared for some reason. I don't know what happened to it. You can almost never see it anymore. But I did get a chance to revisit it not too long ago, and still holds up fairly well. You know, maybe some of the jokes not as good as I remembered them, but still fairly well. Most of them held up. The poem still held up. Those things kill me.
Oh, yeah.
When,
Yeah, I remember those.
when he dies, and this, you know, everything rhymes except for the last line, and it's really obvious what that word should be, and it's like, close all your windows and doors. Wait a minute, screens. Right. But it's a good, fun film. You know, I would recommend it as a more of a mystery comedy than a horror, but there's still a lot of horror trappings in there. A lot of dark shadows and things like that in the corridors, and you know, appearance of deaths and things like that. So it's a good, fun film if you're into those kinds of things. Tim Conway still kills me. Oh my God, everything that guy does just kills me. From Carol Burnett all the way to when he was doing Coach towards the end of his career. He just slays me. So that was my next one.
Okay, so that brings us back to me, and I'm going to jump to 1981 now, and a movie that's a total spoof film, but a really, really fun spoof of slasher movies. called Student Bodies. I don't know if
Oh,
you guys have seen it, but it's just so cool because it's like they've got so many things that they just poke fun of at the whole slasher film thing. I mean, they've got really ridiculous ways people are killed. There's a body count that goes up every time somebody's killed.
yeah.
Somebody kills a fly at one point and it goes up by a half. And you know, they got the breather, who they literally call him the
Oh, yeah.
breather. It's just, it is so over the top ridiculous, but it's just a good time. I remember they stopped the movie at one point and say, you know, movies with R ratings do better at the box office than movies with PG ratings. In order to get an R rating, a movie must contain these things, and one of them is profanity. And so they go, so the producers of this movie would like me to take this opportunity to tell you to F off. Oh, he doesn't say F off. And then it
Right.
goes right back to the movie. You know,
I know. Malbert.
Malbert, sometimes Malbert P. Red.
It's
Yeah.
interesting.
I remember watching was on first time seeing that was on, I want to say HBO or something like that. And I used to be able to quote a bunch of those things. I mean, I just like the breather. He said, I'm doing what my mommy told me not to. And then he goes and I like when he goes through his different weapons, and he's doing this, and then paperclip.
Yes.
He goes for the paperclip.
I think there,
I mean, there's the head. I
Go
mean,
ahead.
there's the hatch. There's the hatchet. There's a chainsaw, I think, and all sorts of obvious weapons. He takes a paperclip.
There's another scene where they show his feet as he's creeping along, and then he's like goes to lift his foot and won't come up because he stepped in bubble gum.
Yeah, I'm gonna kill the kid with the bubble gum.
Yeah.
This is a great one. I mean, if anyone out there hasn't seen it yet, you got to see it. I mean, I think it's one of the very first horror spoofs. I mean, of
It
the
might be.
slashers. Yeah.
I was going to say, with 1981, they're already spoofing slasher movies. That's interesting because it was really slashers really just starting to take hold
Oh yeah.
around 81. I mean, there were a few in the 70s, but it was really trying to be the next horror was right around that time.
There was another one around about that same period. I'm not sure either before or after, called Pandemonium, and it had oh god, it was just hilarious. I mean, one scene, the person gets killed by one of those electric toothbrushes. That's another one that's so funny. I mean, if you like student bodies, you'll like that one too.
I'll have to check that out. I do like the spoofs.
Yeah.
I've heard of it, but I didn't even know that. I don't think I even was aware that was a spoof. Actually,
Yeah, I just in the past couple of years bought it, and it was like had a double feature with another goofy one called Jekyll and Hyde Together Again.
I've heard of that one too.
Yeah. All right. My next one it was made for video, called Forever Evil. And this is basically, it's loosely within the H.P. Lovecraft realm. It takes different bits of the different stories and it kind of puts it together. The lead monster that they're trying to bring back is someone named Zog Kothog. And while the movie doesn't look that great, the story is good. The acting, not so good, but again, it's the story. The story is what gets me. And I think that I mean I mentioned this to a couple of my friends about that, and one guy, yeah, I saw that piece of garbage, and I go, well, I mean, if you're going by the acting, yeah, it is, but the storyline is just so cool. I mean, and you do feel a sense of dread throughout, because you don't know what's the scene's coming, and they do use a lot of shadowy figures, and special effects is awful. I mean, there's like a shower scene where someone's killed, and you can tell that the person's insides, they look like a bunch of sausage links tied together. But for a low budget and directed video, it's really good. I think, and when I picked that, I was thinking of you, Gary, because you like all the H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
It's not like full on, but it takes different pieces, so it's not an adaptation of any one story. It's just all of them kind of wrapped up into one. You got the Cthulhu mythos. You got it's primarily Cthulhu mythos going on, and
I'm gonna have to look that one up. It sounds pretty interesting.
bringing back the elder gods. It's really good. I've had that ever since they put it out on DVD, and I doubt that will ever get Blu-ray because it just really wasn't a big budget. I think it was just like some independent production. So I don't think that one, I doubt. I mean, I'll be surprised if it does. That's my next one.
Okay, so I guess I'm up again. My next one, I'm joining Gary in the year 1981, and for a movie that you would think would be a spoof on slashers, but really isn't exactly much of a slasher thing. Saturday the 14th.
Yeah.
I enjoy this movie. I love Richard Benjamin. I think he's totally underrated as a comedic actor. He was a big flash in the pan in the early 80s, and then he just seems to kind of disappear off the face of the earth. I think he's still with us, isn't he? I might be wrong about that. He's up there if he is, but he did a number of these kinds of spoofs. I enjoyed him in this. I enjoyed him in Scavenger Hunt as a little known comedy that he did, and Love at First Bite, the Dracula spoof. He does that one as well. So in this one, he's the father in a family moving into this old mansion kind of a thing. And of course, they find a book of the dead or some kind of book anyway that conjures up spirits, and you get family of vampires that comes in and starts haunting them. They bring in a doctor who's kind of like a Van Helsing kind of doctor to try and expel the vampires from them, from the house, so they can keep their place. Richard Benjamin is totally underrated, in my opinion. He should be better remembered for these kinds of comedies he did. Always plays kind of a sleazy kind of guy, but he's not so much sleazy in this one anyway. He's a little bit more the father type, but he still pulls it off pretty well. One of my favorite parts was when the doctor, the mad scientist guy, has this potion in his hand. He's walking down the steps, and the vampires come, and they're going to attack him, and he says, "Stand back. If I throw this at you, this has the power to destroy all vampires." And, the vampires run away, and he goes, "Oh, vampires will believe anything." And he drinks it. It's just hilarious little stuff like that throughout the whole thing.
I haven't seen that movie in years, but one of my favorite things was when the wife keeps looking out the window and there's a bat right by the window, and she keeps saying, "Those stupid owls."
Yeah, that's right. They think the bats are owls and things. I almost wonder if it inspired Beetlejuice in some way, because there are some plot things like that where they're trying to scare these people out, and they just think everything's normal and nothing's wrong with the house. But
I like
yeah,
when the daughter's taking her bath and all of a sudden the shark fin, and it's basically kind of like a cheap version of Creature of the Black Lagoon.
yeah, it just spoofs a lot of the old school horror, which is kind of surprising, considering its title, Saturday the 14th. You'd think it'd be spoofing a little bit more of the Jason series, but I'm sure it touches on there a little bit, but not that much, really. Oh, my Corman connection is once again distribution producer, tenuous once again, but still a fun movie that that anyone should actually watch. I heard about that movie for years before I finally got to see it. I wanted to see it. My parents did not like to take me to horror movies. Not really that they didn't want me to see it; they just didn't want to have to go and see it with me. They just didn't want to sit there and watch it. I had to wait for cable and things like that to finally get to see some movies like that. So
As I
Yeah,
recall,
my brother.
the tagline for that movie, I think, was like Friday the 13th is bad, but Saturday the 14th is worse, or
yeah,
something.
I think it's something like they do make a reference. And when I was researching movies that I wanted to do for this, I found out there's actually a sequel that I have not seen. Uh, what was
Not
that
that
sequel
great.
called? But Saturday the 14th Strikes Back, I believe, and I
Yeah,
believe Corman also is the distribution producer for that one as well. And I think it's quite a few years later. I think it's like '88 or something like that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I might have to
It's
check
not
that
as
one
good.
out as well. I'm sure it's
It's
probably
not as
horrible,
good.
but that doesn't mean I don't still want to see it.
Right. It's not as good. I mean, I was expecting it to be like a continuation, but it's totally different.
Yeah, but
But I
I'll see
remember
Richard
watching.
Benjamin in anything.
I remember. Yeah, the one thing I liked about Richard Benjamin in this particular movie is he was kind of playing the straight man. I mean,
He
all
was
this
straight changed.
goofy stuff's happening around, and then he's just sitting there like, oh, okay, whatever. It's like, yeah, my brother and I used to see this a lot on cable, you know, and when I got it on Blu-ray and tried showing it to my girlfriend, she's not into spoofs, but it's a fun
Yeah, I got the opposite. My wife doesn't like the horror movie. She likes the spoofs. So I don't know. She watched that one too and actually did kind of like it. So so for those who do like spoofs out there, it is one of the
That's a good one.
spoof fans would like.
Okay, so I
All
guess
right.
we're back around to me. And I am going to jump to 2022 for a movie, a very indie movie. I think it's pronounced HEBGBTV, but it's spelled HEBGBTV, all one word. And it is an absolutely bizarre film. It is like, if the premise is this: these boxes start appearing at people's houses, and if you put them near your TV, it just connects and gives you this free cable TV. Only the cable TV is all twisted and weird and like horror based, and it's actually an attempt by these beings to take over the world because it gets into people's brains and stuff. And as straightforward as that sort of sounds, it's not straightforward at all. It's almost like a groove tube because a lot of it is showing this bizarre TV stuff. And interestingly enough, after I saw it, I didn't realize this before I saw it, but after I saw it, it's you'll see it listed in a lot of reviews and stuff as a queer movie, which makes it very appropriate for Pride Month. But the thing is, it doesn't hit you over the head with that. It's just, but it's considered a queer movie. And it is just a lot of fun, totally bizarre. Sometimes you just sit back and it's like you're watching some kind of fever dream, it's like, what on earth is going on here? It's very psychedelic and just trippy, and it's just a really fun, bizarre movie. My wife hated it, and I loved it. I was like, this is just so cool. I mean, it was one of those things I couldn't take my eyes away from the TV. It was like wow, what is going on here?
Right.
It sounds interesting. I don't think I've seen that one either.
All right. My next one is from 1998. It's called Still Crazy. This is about an aging rock band that's trying to get back together after their lead guitarist, which was kind of fashioned him after like a Brian Jones type of a character, and that he had some sort of breakdown and he was in the mental institution. So they're trying to get him out because they weren't getting any younger. And Bill Nighy's in this, and he plays the lead singer, and it's just hilarious. I mean, and they finally recruit this young guitar player who kind of basically breathes new life into the band. And I remember one scene where the singer, for some reason, kept on telling them to turn up the amp, turn it up, and they're like the sound person's like, go no, and they go, he kept on motioning to it, turn it up, and they just said, and the guy just says, oh, push it all the way forward, and it's just like, it's like all of a sudden you feel that volume turning louder, like you feel almost like you feel like when Michael J. Fox hit that guitar chord and it, just got blown away from it. There was also one of the scenes where when the band originally broke up because they had a festival that they were doing, and it just turned out bad weather. It started raining and storming, and all of a sudden they're at this festival again, and it started up, and the girlfriend of one of the band guy looks up to, no, not this time. Absolutely not. And the clouds clear, and they just play this fantastic show. And the music was written by, and I cannot remember the guy's name, the guitar player from Foreigner. From Foreigner.
Foreigner? Mick Jones?
Mick Jones, yeah. He wrote the music. And so it had a kind of a Foreigner style, but it had also a little bit of like a glam rock style to it as well. It's really good. I mean, again, on the cover, it was saying this year's full Monty. I'm sure people beg to differ, but it's a nice little comedy. Kind of the opposite of a coming of age type of a comedy, because these people are all old and nearing the end of their life, so to speak, and going out with one last hurrah. I even bought the soundtrack to it because it was real good music.
That sounds pretty cool too. A little bit like the Blues Brothers, bringing the band back together.
Yeah.
Somewhat. Do a little inside baseball. Gary and I were both worried about storms breaking us up today. I just had my first rumble of thunder over here, so who knows? But I think we got some time.
No, we've had nothing here. We're supposed to storm. We've had nothing so far.
Yeah, I didn't really get it. It was little dark clouds, but I just heard a little rumble of thunder outside. So we'll see. Should be able to get through this. So my last film, full circle. Little Shop of Horrors, the 1986 remake. It is a musical. Should be warned, it is a musical. If you don't like musicals, I get it. I don't mind some musicals, but this one's kind of interesting. But I learned something. I really did want to talk about this one because after Roger Corman passed, I must have read a dozen articles on the guy just to learn even more about him because, like I say, he is one of my all-time favorite directors. one of my all-time favorite movie personalities. Honestly, I would make the argument he is the single most influential person in Hollywood in history. And maybe I'll write something on that one day, but about why that is. But he really, really, not just the directors that he did, but anyway, the Little Shop of Horrors remake. The Little Shop of Horrors started off as that 1960 movie. Somehow somebody in Broadway picked it up and wrote music around it and turned it into a musical. And then by 1986, they decided to go ahead and film it once again. And they used a lot of the Saturday Night Live cast of the time, some of them not too far in the past of SNL in the mid 80s. Steve Martin is in it.
Rick Moranis.
Rick Moranis is the main one. That's the one I was trying to think of. Bill Murray also takes on the Jack Nicholson role in there. The really brief role. Actually, for those who haven't seen it, we didn't mention that either time, did we? But the Jack Nicholson and Bill Murray role is that the villain in the movie is a dentist, and the Jack Nicholson and Bill Murray play this role of somebody who's a masochist and loves to go to the dentist. And it's kind of getting off on this in kind of a creepy way in that movie.
Yeah.
Really a highlight of both films, actually. Bill Murray is another one that I would see in anything, literally. I don't care what it is. I don't care how bad the critics pan it. If Bill Murray's in it, I'll at least give it a chance.
Right.
But the little tidbit that I wanted to get to, the reason that I really did want to talk about this was one of the tidbits that I read in one of the articles on Corman that I read about was that the first movie script he ever wrote was actually a musical. It was never produced. Apparently it was that bad. But people compare it, if Corman did write a musical, it probably would have been something like, if you're a fan like me, something like Little Shop of Horrors. He did not write the music for that movie, but it probably would have been something similar to that. So it just makes it, kind of gives you a different lens when you do watch, if you do want to sit through a musical of Little Shop of Horrors. And by the way, while I'm on it, I have a blog, Classic Camp's Classic Blog, and I will be blogging about Corman and how he influenced my writing throughout my life. Because he is that influential. So that's my last film, the 1986 remake musical of the Broadway version of Little Shop of Horrors. Just so we go full circle on that.
Yeah, started with my Little Shop was my first pick, and your Little Shop is your last.
Is
pick.
my last pick.
kind of bookending nicely.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, and that brings us to my final one, which actually sort of has a Bill Murray connection. So interesting, you were just talking about Bill Murray. It's a very odd Bill Murray connection, but this is a movie from 2023, and it's another horror spoof called Caddyshack, which is, of course, a spoof on Caddyshack.
Really?
Except the idea is they've been using this this guy who's the groundskeeper, basically the Bill Murray character, who's even much creepier than Bill Murray's character in Caddyshack. He's come to put together this this concoction that he uses to kill the weeds, and it's like really, really toxic. And it's caused the gophers to become mutated, and they're like killer gophers, and they've got these red eyes, and it is totally over the top crazy. I mean, as irreverent and as ridiculous as Caddyshack is, this is
I just
way.
happen to have it at arm's reach, actually.
Yes.
It used to play the song, but it doesn't anymore. It broke. It doesn't play it used to play the song, I'm All Right, but it doesn't anymore. It broke.
But yeah, this is like even more over the top crazy. It pokes fun at certain people who I won't mention, but if you watch it, you will know exactly who they're making fun of. And it's they throw all kinds of crazy stuff in there, like the caddies have a dance off at one point, and another point there's a musical number, and it's just, and a lot of really, really dirty humor, and it is just it's fun. It's very low budget, but yet it just works well. They don't hide the fact that it's low budget either. I mean, the effects are absolutely ridiculous, but it's like they're advertising the fact that they're ridiculous because it's part of the charm of the movie.
For those watching, I had no idea he was going to bring up that movie. I just happened to have.
That's hilarious.
That sounds awesome. I really need to see that.
You
That's
should
like
see
at
it.
the top of my must-see list. Is there a character named Lacey Underalls? Like the original. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it is a fun, goofy movie.
So I got that going for
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, my last one is a movie adaptation of a concept album called Subterranea, originally done by the band IQ, and they had the film made of this in 2015. One of the lead composers in IQ was a part of the filming process, making sure that they kind of stayed close to source material, embellishing a little bit here and there, for film. And it's about a guy that he's been held captive, and he gets released into the world, and it's just all these different things. He finds a girl, falls in love with her, and then the people that I guess that were his captors didn't like that he was happy out there, so they killed her. And it kind of is basically it's a companion to the CD. If you weren't too sure about what the concept was about by listening to the music, when you see the movie, it kind of comes together. And again, it's like it's a very serious one. It has William Katt is in it. He plays he doesn't play the lead character, but he plays a friend of the lead character. And
from The Greatest American Hero.
yes,
and Carrie.
And Carrie. And it's just like I said, it's just he was basically spending his life in a cell, and he was captive and released into society and must learn to live for the first time as an adult. But what happens is it's too much for him, and he goes back to captivity. It's because that's all he knew. That's all he knew. He thought he wanted to be free, but when it turned out, he really didn't. I mean, it was just easier to be in captivity than to be out there in the world. So it's not really that well known of the film, but it should be, because it had. If you like the thriller aspect of a movie, it has that going for it. It's probably out of all the ones I have, it's the most serious movie of them all, and probably the most serious of what we spoke about. I mean, kind of a polar opposite than what we were all talking about, but really good one. And that is my final film.
Oh, an interesting bunch of movies this time.
Yeah, they were all over the place. I mean, there was more than I was thinking of, but a friend of mine was asking, why only do 5? And I said, well, if you did more, we'd be here all night.
Yeah, and
Next,
probably
we
nobody's
run out
gonna
of material for other episodes.
4-hour movie or 4-hour video.
Right. But so there we have it, folks. Another episode in the bag or in the can. And So if you guys know, we're all on Facebook, and Bill has a group on Facebook. What is the group again? Camp?
Classic Camp's Classic Horror Emporium. I am Classic Camp. I have a couple of other things. I do have a blog, Classic Camp, as well. But the Emporium is probably my most popular thing that I have out there at the moment on Facebook. I have over 1,000 members. We talk about all these old, mostly old movies. Sometimes we talk about newer stuff too, but usually if it has an older connection of some sort. But newer movies are okay to discuss in the group. Not much is really off limits. It's a lot of fun, a lot of spoofy type stuff, a lot of mashup memes and things like that. If you just want to, a giggle of a funny meme every now and again, feel free to join the group.
And then Gary, tell us about your newest thing.
Oh, the newest thing? The newest thing is Spooky Movie Time with Scary Gary, which that's me, but as a character. A little bit of a characterization of myself, sort of. But it's, it's the whole horror host kind of thing. I've just finished up the 3rd episode today, and it'll be live on the Spooky Ventures YouTube channel on Saturday. And I've had a theme each episode. The first one was just called Beginnings. It was some really early horror movies, Silence. And then the second one was Monsters. It had Nosferatu and the Edison version of Frankenstein. This one, the theme is spiders. But in addition to, doing different movies this time, I've also added a second character, a character called DB Lovecraft, who's going to be the remote reporter. And DB stands for dead body. I haven't said that on the air, but on the episode yet, but those are his name, DB. And the funny thing is, DB, if you look at the credits to the episode, DB is credited as being Dark Star. Well, Dark Star is an old stage name of mine, and it's also a pen name that I use for writing for Wormwood Chronicles. So it's just me, but I wanted to make it look like it's the second person, and anybody who's in the know will know that it's me. But yeah, it's a fun thing. You know what? I'm learning how to do the whole video stuff, so it's not perfect by any means, but hopefully each episode's getting a little better, and maybe in a year it will be really, really good. It's fun as it is now, I think. The 2 movies for this time, there's a French silent movie called A Terrible Night, which is it's a little spoof, and it's a real short thing. But then I did this complete Z grade movie called Horrors of Spider Island, which is this completely ridiculous movie from West Germany, and it's the first non-silent I've done, so it's fun. It'll be a fun episode.
I've got a lot of stuff out there for everyone to check out. Me, non-movie wise, I have my page MovieNaut, which we talk about primarily progressive rock music. We do venture out a little bit, but just keep it within there. And I do interviews and then roundtable discussions, all fun stuff, just like we do here. So again, guys, I thank you for got another one down.
As always, it's fun.
Yep, always lots of fun.
All right, I'll talk with you guys soon.
Okay.
Thank you very much for watching this episode. And stay tuned for the next one.